and support you in picking out the right club. Not that I play golf actually, but but just by being there to support them.
Hello and welcome to our Meet the Coach series. I'm your host, Carla Egan. And today we're talking to a coach that's really passionate about helping emerging leaders in their career. He wants to make a difference for young leaders because he knows what it's like being in the trenches, having those difficult conversations and learning lessons the hard way. Our guest today is Robert Pellegrini, and he joins me today from Sydney, New South Wales. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Carla. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, we're here to talk about coaching emerging leaders. So let me start by asking you, what made you choose to support these types of professionals?
I've been in their position before, and I have a lot of experience, over 25 years experience leading large teams, small teams, being an individual contributor when you're also a leader, even if you don't have direct reports. And what I find is there's a lot of coaching available to executives, but I find that there's a gap in regards to emerging leaders, young leaders who are super smart and need some extra, need someone in their corner, need some extra support, because often their leaders are time poor and their leaders are often worrying about, their careers and their next transaction with their team. So I saw an opportunity to be there to support, guide and listen leaders that probably aren't getting a lot of that coaching and mentorship when they're in the corporate world, or when they're in the hierarchy of organizations. So I saw an opportunity there because I remember being a young leader myself, and sometimes it can be a very lonely place, and sometimes you just need someone to talk to and not necessarily be told what to do, but someone to ask the hard questions and even discuss some of the potential hard conversations or presentations that have to occur that they may need support on. So that's why I focused on the emerging leaders, because I feel that there's a gap between from a coaching perspective and the people that I see today. These guys are super smart, and sometimes they just need that person in the background to guide them. And I often say to them, look, you got to look at me as like I'm your caddy, and you're the pro golfer, and sometimes I'm there to help guide and support you in picking out the right club. Not that I play golf actually, but just by being there to support them.
I like your caddy analogy. And look, I think there is this common assumption when people move through their career from being a team member to becoming a team leader or a supervisor or a manager, that that it doesn't require, it requires the same skill set, but there's different skill sets, and leadership in itself is a challenge. So what are some of the common challenges that you've seen throughout your career, but also with the clients, the professionals that you're helping? What are some of those challenges?
Some of the key challenges that I've had to help people through is when you, and you've touched on it there, Carla, which is actually quite interesting, is when you're in the team and then all of a sudden you become the leader of that team, right? So you're emerging, right? At one point you were a colleague of this team, and then all of a sudden you've been elevated and you become the leader of this team. And what I help and coach is how to elevate yourself from being a colleague to actually being the leader of that team, that once you were part of that team. And what tends to happen is organizations, they'll promote this person and say, hey, look, congratulations, you're now the leader of this team. But it's some of these nuances about, some of the personalities and some of the personal aspects of when you're a colleague that a leader of that leader doesn't sort of talk about. How do I elevate myself? This is questions that I get all the time, Robert. How do I elevate myself without sounding like, oh, it's gone to her head or I'm arrogant? So I just talk about, positioning yourself as being accountable and being responsible, and telling this team, hey, look, I am the leader. You're important. You're an important. The team is very important to the success. You're very important, and to elevate yourself through accountability, responsibility, and taking them on the journey. Because often, and I've seen this, emerging leaders think, well, okay, now I'm the leader, so I need to detach myself to elevate myself, and that's actually where it can go wrong. And that's that's one of the most common discussions that I have. I mean, the other common discussions are often about, having to fire someone or have one of those conversations where you have to give some feedback that is not going to be pleasant. But that's a common one as well. But I wanted to highlight this one because this is where I've seen a lot of good leaders end up leaving an organization because they haven't made that transition from being a colleague to a leader of people that they were colleagues with or were their peers at the time.
I think it's an important distinction. And for the leaders that might be following and listening to this episode, what's one key area, what's one thing that existing leaders or emerging leaders that are on their pathway in their career to people leadership, what's one thing that they can do to lead with greater impact?
One thing I always discuss with some of my coaches is the importance of self-care. Now, I'm not going to talk about, I'm going to mention it, mental health. It is a common term, but I like to make a distinction because there is a distinction between self-care and mental health. Self-care is about ensuring that both physically and emotionally and also mentally that you're looking after yourself so you can set yourself up for leadership success. Now, what does that look like? Okay. Obviously there's the regular things like regular exercise, but also an opportunity of self-reflection and using self-awareness as a tool to keep you in check with how you're doing as a leader in terms of what am I doing? How did I go this week? Gee, I could have maybe done that a little bit different, because it's quite confronting. And that's where the emotional care comes in, because sometimes you've got to be prepared to have hard conversations with yourself, because sometimes you're not always going to get it right. And that's why that point of reflection, and whether it be weekly or at the end of the day, even just for 10 minutes, okay, what did I do well? What can I do better? Because there's going to be some really tough days as a leader, especially when you have to make some organizational changes, or you have to have difficult conversations, or one of your team, is quite ill. So that's why it's important that you look after yourself as a leader, because if you don't look after yourself, then it will impact how you lead and how you take your team with you on the journey as a leader.
Yeah, well said. And I think that, when traditionally, and I see this common myself, when leaders have team responsibilities, they tend to put their team's welfare first, which often means that they put themselves last. So I like your focus on self-care and reflection as well. Robert, as a career coach focused on helping leaders to successfully make that career transition into leadership, what does joining the Coaching Directory mean for you and for your business?
Well, joining the Coaching Directory enables me to actually develop my own skills as a coach, because you're with other like-minded people, and the content that is provided to us by the Coaching Directory, there's always a gold nugget there that I find that I didn't know, because sometimes, at the time, sometimes when you're a coach, you think when someone asks you something, or you think, oh God, what, how do I do this, or how do I address this? This is a new thing. So I find that some of those gold nuggets are useful because they're things that I haven't encountered, or they're discussions I haven't had. And I had the opportunity to connect with a coach, Carolyn, I think her name was, lovely lady, and she was coaching around people's well-being. She was working with some schools, and that was totally different to what I was doing. But some of the concepts there were transferable to me, and her energy. So it's, and we talked about the imposter syndrome, which is something that I know coaches sometimes, find challenging. And it was just great to talk to someone, and learn, and share experiences, and see what their coaching world is like. Because often, when you are a coach, you don't want to become parochial or insular, because there's always something to learn that will benefit the people that I'm working with, and I see the Coaching Directory supporting my journey of self-care and discovery.
Wonderful, and we're delighted to have you on our directory, Robert, and thank you. That brings us to the end of our Meet the Coach interview today. Thank you, Robert, for highlighting a development need which can sometimes be overlooked in career advancement.
Thank you, Carla. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us and for following our Meet the Coach series and episodes. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us, and be sure to catch us on the next episode. This is Carla Regan from the Coaching Directory, where we connect you to your ideal coach.